Greetings, everybody. This is David Avocado Wolfe, joined by Jeffrey Smith. We've been chatting. You may have seen a few of the videos already. If not, this is Jeffrey Smith of the Institute for Responsible Technology, a key organization in stopping GMOs, alerting people to the danger of glyphosate and Roundup and other herbicides and other problems related to the use of GMO foods and GMO organisms. I want to get into this thing about what you found out, through when this giant legal case happened, you may have heard of, and thanks to RFK Jr., his team, and to you.
Well, I was peripheral to it, but I think I've been lighting the fire enough so I can take some credit.
There's some. He's not going to take the credit. He deserves the credit. A lot of what we found out about what's going on behind the closed doors of Monsanto, I like to say Monsatan. We owe to this man right here. You found out, when that all came out in the courtroom, there was some interesting revelations.
Oh my God! Here's one of my favorites, and we'll get into more details. But one was you have to test for absorption into skin for a herbicide, and so they tested on cadaver skin. So Monsanto sprayed or applied Roundup onto human cadaver skin, and it absorbed 10%, which is way above the legal allowed limit. It's like 3.3 times. So what did they do? They never told the EPA. Instead, they cut cadaver skin and put it in the oven and baked it. You know what happens when you overcook meat?
Oh, God.
So they baked it, so it was really tough. But that wasn't all. Obviously, when they tried it and it probably wasn't good enough, then they froze it. So they baked it and then they froze it so it was leather-like. And then they put the Roundup on and, there's hardly any absorption. And that's what they reported to the EPA.
This is, you see, I get a lot of trouble. I'm sure you do too. You're anti-scientific. No, we're anti-corruption.
Yeah.
We're pointing out corruption endlessly and forever. And science is very easy to corrupt with money, just like everything else. And I like the way you say it. You call it checkbook science.
Checkbook science.
Tell us more about the checkbook science. What else was going on? What else did we find out?
So this was great. And I want to thank Brent Wisner and the legal team for making these available. And I get to report them and just what we knew. So there's a company, IBT, it's a laboratory. They did maybe 30% of all the toxic studies in the United States for the agriculture industry, for pharmaceuticals, and they were entirely fraudulent. It was completely fraudulent. They would do 2-year rat studies in 8 months. They would cut and paste the results from one study to another. They were completely dirty and disgusting in their laboratories. If rats died in one study, they were replaced. And basically, the companies knew that if you wanted to get your product passed, you'd use this company because they'd always give you passing grade.
Whoa. So this is a company you could hire that's basically
Checkbook
science corruption 101. They're going to corrupt for you. They got it handled. You just say, we want this result, and they come up with that result.
One reporter, when it was busted, one reporter said it was the biggest scientific scandal in the history of the United States and probably the history of the world. And they actually put people in jail. Now, they put 3 people in jail that I know about, executives, and one had worked for Monsanto. Monsanto submitted its study design to IBT and sent one of their people to work for the lab. And when they finished, he went back to work for Monsanto. And while he was working for Monsanto, they discovered the problems with the lab, and he was sent to jail. So this is interesting. So the very first one that was going to say, okay, there's no cancer, was based on fraudulent studies. What did the EPA do when they found all that? They didn't require a single redo for any company that had been implicated in this fraud. They just said, there's other studies, we're fine. So the first one was completely fraudulent. The second one, they did a study, a very small study, and they found that there were more lesions, more tumors in the rats that had higher and higher doses of glyphosate. And so they were going to be declared a possible human carcinogen. And they said you could see the dialogue back and forth. What do we need to do in order to avoid this? Because they were concerned about
because you got the emails, right?
Emails,
inside of
reports.
Yeah, so this is a discovery process in the law called it's called discovery, where you can get access to the emails, the text transcripts. And tell us about that. So they're trying to make the problem go away.
So what they did, you could actually read an email where it said, we're going to hire this doctor who's going to argue that the finding was false so we can try and stop this. Now, the doctor, he was actually going to find a tumor in the control groups. He had not seen the slides at this point. Monsanto's person was saying, this doctor's going to do this. He's being hired to do this, but he hasn't seen the slides. It's not like he looked at the slides and said, oh, he found this. So then he was hired, and he says, oh, there's a tumor here in the controls, which would have wiped out the statistical significance. And no one could see it. They looked at it, it just looked like tissue. And so they kept arguing back and forth, and you can read the EPA comments saying, we don't see anything, it doesn't make sense to us. But they kept arguing and they kept pushing for years until they had enough influence in the EPA, and the EPA just gave up, and they never declared it a possible human carcinogen. Then the next,
this is so Frankenstein.
Oh, it gets
Mary
worse.
Shelley with her book, man, she locked onto something profound.
It gets worse because there was a bunch of people started to do research on glyphosate and found that it was causing oxidative stress and genotoxicity, which can lead to cancer. And so Monsanto wanted to counter that. So they hired the best scientist in the world, Dr. Parry, on oxidative stress and genotoxicity. And they said, okay, let's just have him look at 4 studies. I looked at 4 studies and went, oh yeah, it looks like it does. No, look at all the studies. He looked at all the studies and goes, yep, it confirms it even more. It's he even named what it caused.
So it's genotoxic.
Genotoxic and causes oxidative stress. And you can read the comments back and forth between the executives. Has Dr. Parry ever done research for industry before? In other words, doesn't he know he's not supposed to find that? And they said, well, we can spend a lot of money and try and turn him around, or we can try and find someone else. So legally, Monsanto absolutely had to legally turn over the report from Dr. Parry to the EPA. They never did. What they did do is they ghost wrote a review paper. They even said in the other things, we ghost wrote that review paper. They ghost wrote it, paid some scientists to sign it. And it came to the exact opposite conclusion of Dr. Parry. And that was used by the EPA and around the world as saying, oh, well, I guess it's not genotoxic and it doesn't cause cancer.
You see what we're dealing with here, folks? This is what we're dealing with. We have a corrupt science establishment. So we have the entire Western world depending on this scientific establishment, and it's corrupt to the core, as we're finding out, as we found out through those legal cases, which came through recently, thanks to RFK Jr. and his team, and who are some of the other amazing attorneys.
Brent Wisner, Baum, Hedlum.
Amazing group.
Yeah, amazing group. In fact, I have a 5-part interview with Brent Wisner, who's the lead attorney. It's mind-blowing. Some people describe it as life-changing. You can go to responsibletechnology.org.
We'll put the link. Okay, so we're going to put the link down in the description. And this is what I've been saying for years, right? So we take the brunt of the attacks, and I'm sure you've taken as many attacks as I have,
a bit, yes.
For exposing this kind of corruption. They come after your family. They'll come after you. Now, did you find, this is a great question, evidence that they were coming after people like you and I, and you in particular? You must have found you somewhere in all that.
I read it in the closing arguments. My name came up in a Monsanto email. My name came up because I had written an article, got picked up by Mercola and others, that GMOs were more dangerous for children. And this was back in 2010.
I remember that.
And they called it whack-a-mole. So they said, this is like whack-a-mole. They said, Jeff is at it again. And then, and they basically gave the assignment to this pseudoscientist, Bruce Chassey, who got paid under the table and always denied that he got paid, but he was getting paid, and now that's also made public, to create a website against me and to come out with statements. He was quoted in the New Yorker against me. So they told him basically to go after me. And what the response from the other side was, funny you should use the word whack-a-mole, because Donna and I used that same term starting 2 years ago, that we're going after anyone that comes up with evidence to the contrary for what our talking points are. So I'm one of the whack-a-mole recipients from Monsanto. Now you said that there's scientific corruption, but there was also corruption at the EPA. There was a guy named Jess Rowland who was a Monsanto lapdog, and he was working quietly on behalf of Monsanto. He ran the committee at the EPA that said that glyphosate doesn't cause cancer, and yet he cherry-picked Monsanto studies and ignored the peer-reviewed studies. And there was just a blistering letter from one of his colleagues who had to leave because she had cancer, and basically said, do something. She basically said he does what's needed for his bonus, and to help the companies. But his science is very weak, and one of his colleagues was possibly taking bribes, and she pleaded with him to do what was right for the first time, and it fell on deaf ears, and he actually allowed the glyphosate to pass, saying it didn't cause cancer, and then retired. And in fact, in the memo, in the emails, it said that maybe we can use him once he leaves the EPA because he's been a very valuable asset. Yes.
What you're saying, this is interesting because, like on my I call it Wikipedia.
Oh yeah.
I'm classified as a pseudoscience. What you're describing to us right here is pure pseudoscience.
Oh yeah.
Right. They have activated pure pseudoscience against the American people, against the Canadian people, against the people of Western Europe, all over the world where this stuff is used, all over India, all over Central America. It's pure pseudoscience. I mean, they're lying. There's corruption all the way right through. They're just using money to pay their way through it. And finally, thanks to the founding fathers, really, that we have a judiciary in this country, in the United States of America, that's finally saying enough is enough. We want to see the facts, and they got the facts. And I saw that case. I want to ask you about this, and then we'll end this video. There was like $1 billion in punitive damages twice.
It was a couple, and in fact, I had the honor of going out to dinner with that couple the night that they got a $2.055 billion judgment from a jury, and along with all the lawyers and stuff. And what happened was they got $55 million for compensatory damages, but the jury was hearing all the stuff that I just said and many more things. They were hearing how Monsanto completely lied to its customers. How, for example, the woman would look on the TV and see people spraying Roundup in shorts and tank tops. So she wore shorts and tank tops. And if you look at the internal memos, Monsanto tells its own employees, use long sleeve shirts and boots and Tyvek and cover your mouth. And they did not tell the public, they just showed them people in shorts and tank tops. They learned about the freezing of the skin. There's so many other pieces. Again, go to the interview with Brent Wisner.
We'll put that link right below here in the description.
And so the jury wanted to really strike a blow. Now it was reduced to about 80 million, but we now have 3 different lawsuits that we won, and there's now 42,700 more plaintiffs at last count waiting for their day in court. And so the stock prices of Bayer, which bought Monsanto, just have plummeted since the first trial. They lost at the maximum valuation they lost was close to $50 billion at one point. It's not quite that at this point, but they spent $63 billion for Monsanto, and they disregarded the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma finding, which is all these research and all these trials are about that, and put aside $260 million for all of that, and it looks like they're going to be going somewhere between 8 and 20 billion to settle if they do. So, anyway, I would suggest signing up for our updates, and we'll let you know.
The Institute of Responsible Technology. I'll put the link down below. Please volunteer, donate, do something, help this guy out. I mean, this is a one-man show. It's really you and your team. It's incredible the vast amount of inventory upstairs of all the cases, all the things that have been found out about GMOs, the danger of it all. And then we were all called pseudoscientists and crazy, but we did find out now the truth. And see, this is the thing. The biggest attack I ever got was the science babe. She's not a babe, and she's not scientific, who's a pure pseudoscientist and a pundit who was paid by Monsanto to come after me, $25,000 for her article. And it was turned out she was entirely wrong. It was all lies and corruption. Interesting, isn't it? All right, anyway, details will be below. I'm David Avocado Wolfe. This is Jeffrey Smith.
Safe eating.
Safe eating.